Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Mario Capistrano. I am consultant from IM team, and welcome to the fourth installment of our bi-weekly Viewpoint webinar series. Our topic for today is called Leavers Leave Your Access Behind, and our presenters for this webinar will be Jad Dizon, who is an IM specialist, as well as Jomar Jabalianas, our resident IM architect. And they will talk about the common challenges that organizations face after an employee or a contractor leaves the company. And they also show you how you can address these challenges with IM. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Jad to start the presentation. Jad?
Thank you, Mario. Thank you for hosting this webinar, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So I'm Jad Dizon, and I am your IM specialist. And first and foremost, this is the IM Done Right Viewpoint series. The main feature of this series is we highlight the power of identity and access management and how this can benefit you and your company. This is brought to you by IM Team, a cybersecurity company located here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We offer services like advisory, deployment, managed services, as well as solutions which range from identity governance, access management, and privilege management. So the agenda for this webinar today, Leavers Leave Your Access Behind, we go through the business challenges that companies face nowadays, a technical demonstration, and we end it off with a Q&A. So let's get started here. So what are the common types of employee access within a company? So as we can see here, this employee has access to Office 365, Salesforce, SAP, which are cloud applications or third-party applications. And they also have access to Active Directory and other on-premise applications. So now if a user was to leave a company, the access with these accesses would be suspended first, as you can see here. Once this is suspended, this means that they may be going for vacation, medical leave, and we'll go through the reasons later. After the suspension, usually companies have a 30 to 90-day policy, and once the conditions are met within that policy, the account is then removed from the company. So what are the reasons for suspending or deleting an access of an employee within a company? First off is resignation. An employee can choose to resign and go to another employer, for example. And once this happens, their access within the resources of the company must be suspended immediately. We have contracting. Contractors usually have a specified date. And after that date, they no longer have access to the resources that they once used to. Letting go or termination. This is one of the most important reasons why suspending or deleting access of an account must be done immediately is you may be ending in good terms or bad terms. It really doesn't matter, but the access must be revoked immediately. Extended leave, so this can be medical leave, vacation, parental leave, maternity or paternity, and these leaves make sure that the time frame that you're gone, you don't have access to the resources that you once had to. This makes sure that each employee is accountable for their access within the company. Retirement. So once you reach your golden years, you definitely want to take a rest and you don't want to have access for any resources within the company. Shutting the doors. This is one good example for this is employees having strike, for example. And once they have strike, obviously they're not happy with the situation and they're disgruntled. So that's one of the situations there. And during that strike, they can still pose a potential risk to your company and can have potential damages to your resources. Process orchestration. So there are processes within your company that depend on suspension or the deletion of user accounts. And these processes would be determined from your change management or company policies. So removing access, it must be done right away, right? It's simple to say, but it's not always simple to do. From our experience and from our clients, we've noticed that it takes about a day or two, a week, or even months after before the access is removed. And the troublesome part about this is during that time frame, the employee could still do significant damage to your resources within the company or intellectual properties as well. Not only that, but your reputation as a company is at stake too. You don't want to be seen as online company hacked by internal employee or something within those lines, right? So we want to make sure that the access is suspended or removed right away. So a few real world scenarios here. So we have an IT manager of an online company who left this company and was still able to get access to his account and the other resources within that company. And this cost at least $5,000 in damage and deleting much of the online company's intellectual property. So these are only one of the reasons. So visual representation here. So the IT manager that left 3 months after still got access to his accounts within the company. And that is tough because within that time frame, you'd assume that they wouldn't have access anymore. And with that, he was able to send some malicious code that damaged the intellectual property of the company. As you saw a while ago, it costs around $5,000, but that's only a minimum. The extent of the damage is still being determined. Another example here is a system administrator. Several days after his employment was terminated, the damage exceeds $5,000. Oftentimes, however, the actual value of such activity far exceeds the minimum amount. So a system admin that was terminated was still able to remotely access the manufacturing plant that he used to work in. And similar to the other example, he sent some malicious code within the company that halted its operations, damaged its intellectual properties, and other resources that is still trying to be determined, right? And that's one of the hardest parts here. So it's not only that on your last day, you just take the card of the employee and that's it, all access is revoked. It's also remotely accessing their account is one of the troublesome parts. So how do you solve this? How do you resolve it? How do you make it right? You automate it. So there's not one IAM solution out there that's main purpose is to focus on deprovisioning of accounts. So you've got to make sure that your IAM solution within the company covers the whole identity lifecycle. And this is this identity governance solution here is basically what it does. So on the left-hand side, we see end user, auditors, system admins, and so on. They can manage requests, approve, validate, or audit on the identity governance tool. And once they've been added in that tool, their accounts have been provisioned in numerous applications. So for example, here we have cloud apps, directories, and systems. And that's done automatically. Once you come in on the first day, you get all those access immediately. And this identity governance solution as well communicates with the system of record and determines if the employee is a joiner, a mover, or a leaver. And for joiners is a newly onboarded, right? Movers is moving from one department to another, and leavers is the topic that we're talking about now. This would determine if the account that employee has is immediately suspended, and during a time frame will be deleted, right? So that is my part of the presentation here. Now I'll pass it over to Jomar for the technical demonstration.
All right, thanks, Jad. Let me just share my screen here. All right, before we dive into the demo, let me just give you an overview of the environment that we will be using. In our setup, we have integrated an HR system, which is Orange HR. It's an open source HR system. We have integrated it to an identity and access management solution, and we are using IBM Security Identity Manager as the IAM solution. And we also connected it to Microsoft Active Directory to manage directory accounts and groups. And it's also connected to a cloud application. In this case, we have connected it to Salesforce. to manage Salesforce accounts and entitlements. Now, in this environment, um, we have set it up so that the termination date, leave of absence, contract end date, or employee status from the or any update of the employee status in the HR system are considered triggers for the solution to uh, remediate any or act upon on these triggers. So it could make the solution disable or delete associated accounts in Active Directory or Salesforce or any applications that are connected into the solution. So there are different scenarios that can be covered in this demo. Cases like an employee has resigned, retired, he has been let go, a contractor ending the contract, an employee who went on leave, either short or a long-term leave, or all those reasons presented by Jad earlier. Now, these scenarios, as I said, can be triggers to the identity governance tool to automatically disable or delete the accounts associated to the employee. Now, in this demo, this should disable the Active Directory and Salesforce accounts automatically. So here we will be using a fictitious employee named Pam Curtis, who has accounts on both Active Directory and Salesforce. Now, stepping back, again, for companies that don't have an identity and access management solution, specifically an identity governance tool, they don't usually disable the accounts of their employees who left the company either temporary or for permanent reasons. But if they do, they disable these accounts manually and one by one, which is a tedious task. So let me show you a more convenient and efficient way of doing this. First, let me show you the account of the user, the sample user that we will be using is still active. So let's look for her account in Active Directory. I think her username is P Curtis. Let's find that out. So here you would see that her account is still active. Okay. And also to show you that her account in Salesforce is still active, so I have pre-entered her name here and her password. So let's try and log in. Now here, as you can see, she is still able to log into Salesforce application and still change settings, navigate on the application, and so on. Let me just close that. Okay. So going to the HR solution now, so we have confirmed that her accounts are still active, right? Let's change Pam's status in the HR system. Let's say Pam has decided to resign. She found a better job on other companies, or she has some other personal reasons of resigning. So let's just say, being the HR specialist or HR employee, I log into the HR system and I search for Pam Curtis, profile within the HR system, and I would change her status to to terminate, or I just want to update her status to resign. For example, let's say I would like to terminate her employment. Let's provide a reason here. So she resigned. All right, some notes and confirm that. Now, once that is updated within the HR system, so here she is already terminated. That becomes a trigger to the identity governance tool to automatically disable the Active Directory accounts and her Salesforce accounts, right? So um, let's go back to Active Directory. Okay, previously we have searched for her account that was still active, right? So let's search for her account again. P. Curtis. So here you would notice that there's already an arrow down here. This means that her account has been disabled already. Okay, and that was just because uh, just because of the trigger coming from the HR system telling the IAM solution to disable all her associated accounts. So that's her account in Active Directory. It's already disabled. And let's try logging into Salesforce again. So here, P. Curtis, IAM OneCloud, pre-entered. I have pre-entered her username and password. So here, you would see that her account has already been disabled. So her account in Salesforce has been disabled by system administrator. But that one was done automatically by the IAM solution, right? This would show you, that you need to have an effective IAM solution to avoid any security risks, just like the one presented by Jad earlier. And to add, depending on the policies of the organization, you can also leverage the identity governance tool to automatically delete unused or dormant accounts that were previously left for any reason. Other companies have retention policies for accounts of employees who left the company for audit purposes. And once audit is done, or once a certain period is reached, that becomes a trigger to the tool to automatically delete those accounts. And deleting those accounts would also save you, company licensing costs if you are paying for licenses based on the number of user accounts, like in Salesforce. So that was the technical demo. Let me turn over the floor back to Mario for any questions if you have any. So Mario.
Thanks, Jad and Jomar, for that very insightful presentation. I got a question here on the chat. It says, the first one says, how does the provisioning work for federated apps?
Okay, let me take that question. So for federated apps or federated applications, like just like what I showed earlier, Salesforce, Office 365, and other applications that can do federation. Once you have disabled the main account, for example, it uses Active Directory or Microsoft Azure to authenticate users and federate those users to these applications. Once the main account is disabled, that also disables the access to these applications. Now, if these applications are also connected to the IAM solution or to the identity governance tool, depending on the policies that you set, you can also automatically disable those accounts or even delete those accounts. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, thanks. Next question here. It says, does this also apply for employees changing roles or moving to another department?
Thanks, Mario. I can take that. So that's a good question. So this does not necessarily apply for employees changing roles or moving to another department because they still have their accounts within the company. The only thing that would change is the entitlements that they do get. So their original entitlement from their original role is no longer within their account, but they do get new roles depending on their job position and the department they are in.
Okay, thanks, Jad. So if anybody else has a question, you can type it in on the chat. The last question that I have here says, for employees that leave the company, are their accounts only suspended or are they completely deleted from the system?
Thanks, Mario. That's a good question. So for employees that leave the company, it would depend on your company policy on how you want to suspend or delete accounts. From our experience, what we saw, once they're terminated, for example, their account is immediately suspended. And in a 30 to 90-day period, their account is being reviewed just to be sure that there are no conflicts within that account. And after that period, the account is then deleted. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Chad. I don't see any more questions coming in on the chat, so I guess I'll turn it over back to Jad for the closing remarks for this webinar. Jad?
Thank you, Mario. So, make IAM right for your business. How can you make it right for your business? So, a few questions that we could reflect on for our company, how we could do better. So, do you have users who haven't been deprovisioned yet or the right way yet? Right? Do they still have access even though they've been gone for a few months now? How does your company deprovision users? Is there a whole process in how it's done? Are your policies are in the right place? Are the accounts immediately removed or suspended? What is your user life cycle? Right, so those are a few questions that we can reflect upon that can improve our current IAM solution or current solution to make it better, right, to maximize it. So thank you everyone for joining us in this I Am Done Right Viewpoint series, part 5, and leavers leave your access behind. Please join us in our next webinar. imteam.com/resources. You'll see all our events there. And the next one we have is the limit privilege access on April 18th. And that concludes Leavers Leave Your Access Behind webinar series for the I Am Done Right. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.